Yeah, we preserved all the biological data. Okay, we'll just let them kill themselves. Oh, crap. Alexa? Off! Alexa. Turn off, Alexa.
Don't.
Stop recording. Oh, crap. Is this live?
Consciousness rebels. We need you. Turn on Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy. If you... Some people say that I have soul. I don't know. There's only one thing I know for sure. If you watch Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, you will get ahead. By a foot. If you watch Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, you will learn there are other dimensions. You will learn how to connect to beyond.
And we're back. Hello there, buddy. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the New Year's Eve edition of Reality's Edge, the Doc and Buddy Show. Thanks for being here tonight. And, buddy, how are you doing over there?
I'm doing fantastic on the East Coast. I look back on this year and our show and just so thankful for so much.
Yeah.
What a been.
But it's been a great run. You know, we had this idea 2 years ago, and it's just been getting better. There's always so much to talk about. We run out of time. It seems like the topics are growing faster than we can actually cover all of it, and that's a good sign, right? There's no shortage of interesting topics to talk about on Reality's Edge, because as we were saying right before the show, I don't think that the mass media is really getting it yet. So we have a big job to do. And thanks to all your listeners. Hey, John, thanks for being here. Hey, we got Shambhala. How's it going, dude?
Ooh, Shambhala.
And hey, Michael. We got a lot of folks here. Thanks for joining us. So, Bud, we got our work cut out for all of us to get to the truth about these topics, to find out what's going on, and to, really use our investigative skills to get to the truth, right? Comrade?
Doc, not just the major media. It's also other UFO researchers and what I call UFO entertainers.
Yeah.
And we do, not to brag, but just to point out a difference. We really explore the topics with the audience. We are really going for the what nexts, what ifs, and the real practical questions that need to be asked. And, it's easy to rehash history. We prefer to, kind of look forward and try and make some progress as we start unlearning all the stuff that we previously thought was correct. So, that's been a hallmark for me in this show, is unlearning and keeping a more open mind. And you've really helped me with that.
Oh, well, thank you. It's likewise. I think, Bud, if one thing we've learned so far is that reality is bigger than we thought. Can we agree on that?
Absolutely. And our senses can just barely, taste a sliver of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's bigger in so many ways, and I feel like we're dealing with this mindset that we've inherited from hundreds of years of superstition that says all you see is what your senses show you. There isn't anything else. So stop dreaming about it. Stop daydreaming. Stop fantasizing. There isn't anything else but what you can see. I mean, science has told us for 100 years that it doesn't work like that at a subatomic level, but we're told at this level of reality, just forget all that. It's just all classical. And it's a total bunch of BS. We got all these wonderful topics we talk about here: precognition, ESP, remote viewing, ghosts, near-death experiences, life after death, UFOs, ETs, and it just keeps going on and on. These experiences that so many people have. You start talking even to the average person out there on the street, and they've either had some experience with these phenomena or they know someone who has, and yet collectively we still haven't engaged in any sort of meaningful discussion about it. So it's all still under the table. But that's what we're here to do, is to kind of find out, right?
And this is a really reasonable discussion, Doc. It's easy to, subjugate these topics. It's easy to make fun of ghosts. It's easy to make fun of people who want to contact ETs. But if you do the research, you are confronted with a paradigm shift. You are confronted with a reality-bending, whole new paradigm. And that's the paradigm that we're on the edge of right now, peering into. And that is exciting. As, a scientist or as an explorer, how cool is it to be on the edge of a whole new frontier?
Yeah.
Where we can difference. We can research. We can use our intellect to gain ground and hopefully unite these things. The past 10 years even for this topic and these topics has seen a lot of progress. We're moving towards, first, consciousness started to come into the discussion, and psychic stuff started to come in more and more, and consciousness and ET and UFO. And now we see all of these different things part of one wheel, one thing in a lot of philosophies.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but that's where things are pointing, and it's really exciting. And it goes with our theories as well.
Yeah. Somebody says, buddy, is that you look, John Hudson says, you look like a psychic Mandarin. And
what?
A psychic Mandarin. And
nice.
someone is asking if you can tilt your camera down just a bit so we can see more than half of your face. Is that possible? Just to tilt the camera. Yeah, okay, there we got the whole Budinsky. We got the whole, I'm going to take this off for a second. This is a little tighter. There we go. It's so true, and there's so much good research out there, but it seems like sometimes we're going at a glacial pace, even with groups like TTSA. You know, Grant Cameron the other day called him MJ12 too. that sort of group. And you know, you were talking a few minutes ago about resolutions for 2020, right? And I've been thinking about this for the past couple of days. And I don't know about all of you, but I really feel like I would like some serious disclosure to happen in 2020. And my resolution personally is to keep investigating these topics to the best of my ability to see if we can figure out what the F is going on here. And what do people know out there who know these things, and what are they telling us, and what is really the reality of this phenomena? Where is it coming from? Is it multidimensional? Is it extraterrestrial? What are the intentions? I don't know, folks. I feel like personally we have the right to know this. It's 2020, and I think we need to make some progress here. And how do you feel about it, buddy? You're involved with some of this research.
This is critical. I mean, this is such a critical topic right now. With the state of humanity, we're obviously in the middle of a mass extinction, resources versus population growth. It's a very, very, very serious time. And UFOs have crashed all over. And it's been intentional in every major country. And what, unfortunately, every major country is doing is the same mistake that likely has created the Fermi paradox or the Fermi wall. And they've taken all these materials, and each country for around 50 years now have been weaponizing and studying and keeping them a secret because they think that the technology is the most valuable thing and that will keep each country safe. But the irony is, Doc, the most powerful thing is these craft are the only physical, undeniable evidence that we are not alone in the universe. And that is the most powerful thing. That's more powerful than metamaterial. That's more powerful than resonance, creating tremendous energy levels. That's more powerful than anything. So these countries and these decision makers who want to, cast this subject as a threat or all these other things are denying all of us this change that we need now. I think if humanity knew we were not alone, this would be a huge, huge paradigm shift. This is what we need.
Yeah.
And now.
No, it's true, bud. I mean, this would be a total game changer. And I mean, it was Hal Puthoff who told me in sort of a conversation after his talk at the SSC IRVA meeting in Las Vegas last June. I was talking to him after his presentation where he said, yes, the government has been studying this topic the entire time. The government never got out of the UFO business. In fact, he said it was pretty clear because we had the Carol Bolender memo, remember, where he said that sightings that had national security implications were never part of the Blue Book system. And it was Paul Dean in Australia that actually researched these other channels of communication, OPREP 3 and service and all these other means that the military has to communicate within itself without going through other external channels. And he said the Carol Bolender memo was pretty clear that this topic had never gone out of sight of the U.S. government. And Hal told me the problem here is nobody communicates with other people about the topic. It's completely compartmentalized, segmented, and one group doesn't talk to the other group. They maybe even be studying the same thing or pieces that could fit together conceptually or even physically, but it'll never happen because no one's talking about it. And he made an analogy to the Soviet Union in the 1950s where the Soviet Union was ahead of the United States in electronics, but they fell behind because it was so compartmentalized and, classified. So Hal was the one who told me that the problem is too much classification of this topic. And yet, I'm waiting for some declassification here. I know all of you are too.
We know that there's numerous groups and that have been working on this subject for a long time. Air Force, Army, Navy, Department of Energy, DIA, CIA. I mean, that's like 7 right there. And this stovepiping is so extreme that please don't quiz me on what I'm about to tell you because I'm going to reveal a little something.
Okay.
A head of one of these stovepipes asks me to remote view who the heads were of other UFO groups within the government. So if that doesn't prove your point, that this is so bad, and this is dangerous too. Luis Elizondo talked about there being so much stuff just from ATIP that it was a security risk.
It was a security risk, so much stuff just from ATIP.
And think about it. The head of one of these groups asked me to remote view who, I mean, that's the most ludicrous thing.
How
But
come,
that just tells
why aren't we all working together on this? I mean, I just don't get it. I can imagine scenarios, but I just feel like something's probably really gone wrong here in this whole development. I don't know about you. But, I mean, so one of these high-level alphabet agencies directors asked you, I don't know which one it is, so I don't know if it's an agency, whoever it is, asked you, who's the head of the other UFO committees, whatever we call this, and
one.
MJ-12-2, MJ-12-3, MJ-12.
And, you know, in the past, year, because of the work I've been doing and the level of positive results, you know, I've gotten more and more connected to a lot of these great researchers and great scientists. And, I think I revealed, last week that we're doing some tests with, Colonel Alexander, and doing some really cool experiments with a really top-notch big group. Can't mention, but another top scientist and Lance Munguia, who did Third Eye Spy and Six String Samurai. We've been talking for about a month with this head scientist and myself and Lance, going over some of the crazy incidents that have happened in this past year and some of the evidence, and did some live remote viewings for him with crazy great results.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really nervous, as you can imagine, because I want, some of this information to come out, and Lance would be the ideal person.
Yeah, right.
But who knows? It's nothing stone.
I ran into Lance at the IRVA meeting in New Orleans a couple of years ago, and we went on the swamp tour together. I'd never met him before, and there we were with these, alligators and creatures around at this nighttime swamp tour, which was really a lot of fun. And he says, hey, I do films, I study this stuff, and we got to know each other. And then he says, I'm working on the Third Eye Spies, and it was amazing. So, great movie. One of a kind.
Great. And he is a wonderful human. And there's a lot of great people in this field. There's a lot of weird and terrible people and people who hurt our field. But there's a few people who really help. People like, to me, I think Gary Nolan is a real wonderful ambassador for our community. There's a lot of these guys that are really good people, caring people. And you can research this stuff and not be goofy and be respected. And you know what? With us, Doc, I think it's important too. We are really science-based. We're nuts and bolts. Even though, we're very much into sci and utilizing it in our daily lives, we want to know the mechanisms. We're not just, woo, this is, crystal energy matrix quantum, we want to know the facts.
Yeah.
And this year might be a big year for the facts.
That's what I'm counting on. This is going to be a big year for facts. Now, we've got some people in the comment section. Very good points, Buddy. We've got some people in the comments. In a little bit, Buddy is going to be RVing some of your questions. So we've already got some people are asking some questions. And how about I won't say them yet. Buddy can't see your comments because he's coming to us from Skype. You put some of your questions here. What's going to happen this year? We already have one popping up here, and I'll ask Buddy, and he'll do like a mini. Is this right, Buddy? You're going to do a little mini RV and give us your prediction?
Yeah, projection
in a moment. You don't. Okay, so we got one question so far. I see from Patrick. We'll get to your question in a second. I want to be kind of clean. So, talking about scientific facts, one more recap before we get to our predictions for 2020. We did a little recap a couple days ago, Bud, on Christmas Eve, right? We covered a lot of topics, and one thing I thought that we forgot to mention, which was pretty good on the progress scale, was the multiverse topic came back as a subject, not just from the Oak Ridge folks in the Mirror Neutron universe, which in and of itself is fascinating because it's testable. They're actually testing neutron decay rates to see if neutrons are sharing themselves in some sort of time-sharing experiment between us and one parallel reality. But we had Sean Carroll's book, Something Deeply Hidden, which was an impassioned defense of the Hugh Everett multiverse idea from the get-go of his quantum physics book. And it's not a book that's trying to change your mind about quantum mechanics. He's just saying, look, the simplest interpretation of the Schrodinger wave function is multiverses. Now, if you want to add other things in about wave function collapse and classical measurements and all the stuff that's been added into quantum mechanics, you're adding stuff in, and then we end up with kind of the wave collapse in one world. But if you take it at its simplest, you end up with multiverses. Now, personally, as you know, Bud, this has always appealed to me. I can't prove that these phenomena we talk about are coming from a multiverse, but it's certainly a big possibility that all of these phenomena do come from one scientific sort of principle, which is parallel realities, multiverses, resonance, bleed through. This is what I study. And so I was happy to see that from Sean Carroll, even though he's not a particularly strong supporter, to put it mildly, of our subjects here. I don't think he takes any of them seriously, but at least it introduced the idea that, hey, the multiverse is not something that's extravagant and wild and even strange. It's just a very basic interpretation of quantum mechanics.
And it's very fractal, the multiverse is.
Yes.
And what it also makes me think about how humans, are very human-centric, and there's just humans on this one little planet. But in fact, there's millions of planets, as we found out over time. And that's, I think, might be just the same case with these dimensions. And I don't, there's a lot of different types of multiverses, and it's fun to explore, think about those types. But
no,
of course,
true.
Of course, there's, in terms of extraterrestrials, there's a lot of different possibilities, and it's really hard to pin down one. And
right,
a lot of craft,
lot of craft out there, a lot of different shapes and all types. I've seen them, you've seen them, folks watching, you've seen them too.
Where are they built? Where's the material from? Are they building each one kind of improvisationally based on the material available and the goals? Are there way stations under the water deep where they collect up resources until they're ready? Where's the factories? Why are there fleets?
Is this subject classified? As I've mentioned before, I have spoken to a top scientist on the planet who I met at a conference a couple of years ago, who told me he had handled these materials, that it was several thousand years ahead of where we are in terms of nanotechnology. And this is someone who was an expert in nanotechnology. He said, we don't make that here. We don't know how to do this yet. It was way too fine, very thin material, directly interacted with the quantum field, changed the density of the quantum field. He said these people came to him and said, can you figure out how it works? And he said, no. It's not. It's just too far ahead of where we're at. It's like if you gave a laptop like this to someone 100 years ago, they wouldn't even know really what would you do with it, right? So I've met these people, and they don't even want to come on a show like this. They don't want their name ever mentioned again. And the only thing I can think of why they would be afraid to come forward is that they've been signed something, there's NDAs, it's classified, and it's holding back progress at this point because, you got the Tom DeLonge group coming forward saying, we have these pieces. We've entered agreement with the Army to study this material, that agreement they have. So we know someone's working on it, but I just don't, I don't think it should be held back to the point we don't have any public discussion about it. It gets back to Hal's point. There's no evolution if we can't talk about it intelligently, at least on a general level. So why don't they just come out and say they have it instead of just pussyfooting around like this?
They're handicapping society.
Yes.
They're handicapping our youth's imagination. They're handicapping all of us in terms of secretly creating the weapons, weaponizing this stuff.
Yep.
This is really the thing that I'm most scared of is us. 50 years of visitation, we have not been attacked in a full-scale war. I think calling them a threat is such a thinly veiled, cynical attempt strictly to get funding from the government.
Yes, and I think we have to respect Stephen Greer's point of view on this, which was, by the way, in total agreement with Richard Doty from my interview with Richard. But his interview was with way back with Stephen Greer a couple of years ago for that movie Unacknowledged, and he was on there. Well, he was on there for 90 minutes in the extras, but I have to tell you, Doty told me off camera that the interview was much longer and they weren't given permission to air the rest of it. This is why it's boiled down to 90 minutes. There was a lot more on. It went down for a couple hours, and we got 90 minutes in the extras, which, by the way, Steve Greer posted on YouTube, the full Doty interview, actually the edited one, in Unacknowledged, just bits and pieces here. But Stephen's always said, sure, there could be some hostile ones out there, and that's why we need to start talking to them, get them down here, and have a conversation and saying we're not going to put up with this behavior. Doty told me that the hostile ones are just a small minority of the entire realm of species that we're dealing with. So, this has been introduced into the public discussion now. We need to know what is going on with this and stop treating the whole thing like it's hostile if it's only a couple rogue elements, as Greer calls it, a couple rogue elements. Why are we treating the entire gamut as if it's hostile? Because that's what we're hearing so far, right?
Absolutely. And Doc, the excuse that everyone will go crazy like War of the Worlds and that it's going to make society unstable is a lie. You know as well as I do that the next day after they announce, everyone's still going to be going to work. Everyone's still going to be doing the same begrudging thing. This will just be like another coffee table discussion, but perhaps the most important discussion as a race we've ever had. And maybe every newscast from now on, from that point, will have a ET update, because there's never-ending mysteries revolving around this. Part of the government's fear of releasing this information is, what are they supposed to say? We don't know. We've got this crazy ass stuff. We don't know. They fly circles around us. We don't know. We know this little thing. We know that little thing. If someone was really wise, if I was the president, I would be honest. And I would put it all out on the table. And I would say, there is these craft visiting, and we don't know. It's a mystery. But after 50 years, we can tell it's not overtly, majorly hostile, so we can feel good about that. We might even be able to assume that a more advanced race would be studying, researching, maybe even helping us without us knowing. Right. And let's try to hate first before fighting.
Well, see, no, it's that. But buddy, what you just said is really important, and that's a really big step, which is to admit you don't know what's going on. I like to wake up every morning and just remind myself how little I really understand of what's going on. And the thing is, we've got all these so-called experts out there that like to present themselves as if they really know what's going on. And our society is it's inundated with total BS every day from these so-called experts who pretend that they know what's going on. We don't have a clue what's going on. The thing keeps lurching forward day by day. It kind of works, but we don't know what's going to happen next. Look at all these cards on the table. Mass extinction of animals, global warming, some intelligent entities visiting us, we don't know where from, could be our own planet. There's so many wild cards, and to think you know what's going on even a year from now, you're completely fooling yourself. That's my view of it. So just one thing to do in 2020, folks, just try it for a week and see if you get some benefits. Just remind yourself when you wake up how little you really understand of what's going on. Bud, we have lost. Are you there, Bud? We have lost Bud for a second. Hold on a minute. I'm going to see where he is. Bud, are you on the line? Aha, we got cut off. They cut you off, buddy. Hold on. We're going to get him back here. We got you back there, huh? Are you back, buddy?
A little, but I think I'll be back.
You're kind of breaking up a bit. Let's see. Wait, we got him. We got something, folks. Hold on.
Okay, the
Hey,
audio okay?
John is with us. Hello, Caesar. How are you doing, buddy?
Okay, back.
Barno, yes, I will be visiting the crop circles. We're scheduling some tours for this year. Just getting some questions here.
There's a wonderful woman, Diane, out there who I've got to hook you up with. You met before out there.
I see. Yes. Thank you, all our
So,
friends from the UK. We appreciate having you. Great visiting with them in the summer when I get a chance to go over. Half the fun is visiting with other researchers over in the UK. It's so interesting to compare notes and what they know from their Condign report, their MOD. Fascinating stuff, buddy. So,
yeah, they're well educated too. I
very
noticed
well
a lot
educated.
of the UK
Yes.
and explorers very well educated.
Yeah, and it's the site of the Rendlesham Forest incident in 1980.
Oh,
Wow,
wow.
we're going exactly 40 years ago today. Isn't that right? Sir,
They're
they're
supposed,
back. Isn't that the famous quote?
yeah, they're supposed to be releasing some information this year
Really?
from Rendell, and they were teasing it. TTSA was teasing it.
Right. Right, they were
Um,
teasing with it. That's right.
there's so much stuff, Doc. It's so ridiculous. And this phenomena can't be pegged. It's like orbs. Orbs are very dynamic. There's all sorts of different kinds in my belief system. I don't know everything, but my assumption is there's a lot of different kinds. It's messy. There's natural plasma balls and fireballs and things like that, and ball lightning. And then there's other things. There's a lot of photos of dust particles that are illuminated that people, come on, let's be frank with each other, gang, are a little too excited
Yep.
about illuminated dust particles and illuminated other things that
Thank you,
happen to do.
buddy. I really appreciate you saying that.
There's so much garbage orb stuff out there. And the real orbs, when you really see them, there's this one, I forget what city it is, but it's this orange glowing ball and it's from like a security camera overlooking a small little neighborhood, all one-story buildings, and you see this orb fly through the neighborhood slowly, like under a patio, turn and cruise around. Those are the ones that I like. And orbs are so many different types, so many different things. A lot of the reports of Triangle Craft were associated also with orbs, would leave them and come back to them. And Belgium, there's a tremendous amount of that. So we know they're kind of a drone or a probe for larger craft. And people assume there's light beings. I remember sitting with Stephanie in the truck and saying it'd be really cool to see a light being, or I can't remember if it was orb or light being, and poof, 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 poof in the sky. That was that first great sighting, and I got it on camera, and you can zoom in on it, and it has a pyramid shape, and then it has another weird shape, and it has that sparkly in the center, and it was analyzed and MUFON and all that stuff. But wow, this topic, that's just the orbs. Now the craft, it's the same mix. You're going to have government black projects. You're going to have real stuff. You're going to have maybe even multiple different types of races. And whatever the most advanced race is that's out there doing this has a real strategy. And we can see from history how they have responded to us and our technology. And that says a lot about them, how they've chosen to respond to us. They could have at first been, that 70 years appearing to be 70 or 100 years more advanced than us, and slowly over time reduced that until it got to a point of, communication or whatever. But they've kept this kind of, 100-year distance from us technologically. And we can see from UFO history how it reflects us. It's very reflective of us, representing near future technology. Something's fishy's going
Oh,
on.
something really fishy. I better believe it. Yeah, and I see the thing is, buddy, it still always comes back to if we can't have a conversation amongst ourselves at all levels in our society, which has to include the government and the military too, if we can't have an open and honest conversation about this, how are we supposed to talk to these beings if we can't even have a communication amongst ourselves with our
Rob,
or it doesn't work. That it starts with us.
Rob,
And the thing is, once that conversation starts, We don't know where it's going to go. I don't know where it's going to go. You don't know where it's going to go. Nobody knows. But if we don't engage in that conversation, how are we ever going to make progress on this topic? It's just ridiculous.
There's a beauty about this.
Yeah.
We know that there's this consciousness field as remote viewers and people who use psi. And we know consciousness is deeply involved, and we can read across time and space and touch it. And they can too. They can read consciousness better than we can. So you can't BS them. You can't lie to them and say, we're going to do this. You have to be really earnest. And that's not easy for governments.
No, not in there. Okay, not just one. No, it's true. Now, there's one little thing that happened today on this whole front, which gives me hope, which is that a federal court in San Francisco agreed to have a case against the EPA go to trial over fluoride. There's a case in the federal courts of the fact that the EPA hasn't regulated fluoride like a toxic chemical in the water, right? Wow. According to the TSCA law, which is Toxic Substances Control Act. And there's this group of people we know from fluoridealert.org, Paul Conant and others, who have been pressing for change, and they finally got it into court. And yesterday, the judge refused to have the EPA's motion for summary judgment allowed to go through. Summary judgment said, let's just finish it right now. And the judge said, no, we're going to have a trial about this. So this is just one case, something that's put in the water for like 2/3 of the people in this country with really no testing, no double-blind controlled experiments. We don't know what we're doing. We have people with high school diplomas putting stuff in our water that can kill you when it gets to high enough doses. And finally, we're going to have some public disclosure about what the F is going on with that. It's a neurotoxin. And it's not regulated.
And, we've got all of these pollutions and the air and the sound, even the ocean, the water, the sounds in the ocean are polluted. Where whales communicate the way they used to. No. We are so polluted and poisoned. This is going to tie into some of the predictions. A lot of the predictions that I got are dire.
Okay.
Which is a surprise.
Okay. Let's move to that segment. And buddy, I couldn't agree with you more. There's so many articles in Science Magazine about noise pollution for animals. They found that animals are changing their migration patterns and their distribution around the planet to avoid people because of noise. Because they communicate with their voices, and we know how animals communicate. They need to be able to hear each other. And if there's too much noise in the ocean and even on land, they can't find each other and hang out and have fun. So it's so important.
Not as nice as a bird's song, sadly. Let's do a quick, review.
Let's go for it.
Okay. First of all, we did do really well last year.
Yes. Let's review.
A lot of predictions for earthquake that was timed well. The Kanye difficulty early in the year. We had even made the prediction that President Trump was going to be impeached for obstruction.
Yeah, right. You did say that. You said that exactly. It's right. It's what you said a year ago. Yeah, here we are.
We were really surprisingly accurate on a lot of stuff on that one. So we were just pleased. For me, in general, predictions are less accurate than my RV and astral projections, and I'm not completely sure why. I don't know if times shift, things change. I don't know. But that's just the case. But I found that my predictions like this tend to be around 80% accurate, which is a very good number. But we'll see, won't we? Time will tell. So do you want to dive right in?
Yeah. So do you want to do some predictions and then some RV on some of these questions that people have had? What sort of order do you want to do it in?
Absolutely. You know what? I could do a few of the predictions.
Okay.
Then you could give me a couple of the ones from people, and then I'll take a little break back for a second, and you could talk. You could improvise, juggle, play guitar, puppetry.
Yes.
And I'll be very brief, and hopefully no more than 3, topics, and we could dive into. I'll try and be efficient. I feel very in a good space today, so it shouldn't be too tough. Okay, let's dive right in. I have a stock market crash coming in the first quarter. And there's going to be several stock market crashes this year. And these are going to be more than minus 400 on the Dow.
Okay.
It's not too surprising. You could associate that with Trump stuff, but we don't know how the Trump stuff's going to go. But that's a big stock market crash, the first quarter.
Yeah.
The methane permafrost increase and oxygen decrease. Both of the rates, there's something that was a reoccurring throughout this whole prediction for next year, is that rates that we had previously established about the destruction of the environment, the melting of the ice caps, the amount of methane released, the amount of oxygen that's no longer going into the atmosphere, all of these are going to be revised upwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like keep being revised, but next year is going to be a big revision, and the ice is going to be very, very dramatic. They're also going to come out with a study at some point where the environmental destruction, toxins, plastics, and all of that stuff now officially shortens human life.
Plastics,
all of this stuff. Male fertility is already crappy. Female fertility is all whacked out. Our biology is really heavily under assault from our own toxins, PB whatevers, and the new UV rays that are now hitting the ground that damage DNA. Never had that before. There's going to be a major science discovery about fundamental physics, very, very fundamental physics, the very nature of reality kind of stuff. It's either going to be a really big on the order of like a Higgs particle or something even more formative. Hopefully it's our field that we're talking about. Disclosure continues. There are going to be more videos. TTA's material report is going to come out on some of their material. Nolan Valet have a separate thing, and they are going to release some of their stuff. So disclosure is really going to ramp up next year. It's not going to be the big announcement. Unfortunately, I didn't get that vibe. This is a weird one. The first half of the year, I'm not giving a lot of time, but a parachutist dies in performance as a crowd watches in horror. So, that's the first quarter of the year I have. The first quarter of the year, parachutist dies. No, it says first half of the year. So that gives me a lot of 6 months for someone to die jumping out of a plane. We have a new government in Israel, and they bring Netanyahu to justice. Netanyahu gets charged, and he won't go to jail next year, but the process will start where he will see some jail time. New ocean rise predictions, almost 50% more in rate increase. They're going to confirm microbial life on Mars. We will get an official confirmation. It's going to be based more on overwhelming cumulative evidence rather than
that's a biggie.
Bug. That's a biggie. That's a biggie. Right now, we already know there's seasonal blooms of methane on Mars, which is very indicative of life. Seasonal.
Yeah.
Very important.
Right. That's true.
There's going to be a very big volcano in Mexico. These are the volcanoes for this coming year. Mexico, there's going to be one in the South Pacific, which is going to be near like Malaysia, Philippines, right in that area there. There is going to be an Alexander the Great archaeological discovery, a very big, prominent, big deal Alexander the Great archaeological discovery. Something directly correlated to him. They also are going to reveal a study on, this one is actually just logic, really. It's a topic that I care about. There's going to be a study on mixed martial arts fighters, and they're going to discover that they receive like 5 times the damage football players do for concussions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just think about it. These guys get knocked out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They get knocked out. And the UFC is not, and all these fight organizations are not paying for counseling. There's a lot of domestic violence in the MMA community, and really crazy, domestic violence and murder cases. And the UFC and all these fight organizations should be providing counseling, and they should provide a fund for these guys. So that is going to come out. And that's a nice little start.
Yeah. That was interesting, though, this idea about announcement of microbial life on Mars. Fascinating, because, a lot of us have been expecting something like that. That would be the first slide down the slippery slope of recognizing there's life outside the planet, right? Is microbial life somewhere else in the solar system, some exoplanet somewhere. It could be Mars. We knew, yes, are these seasonal blooms there. Seen a couple presentations about this, Dr. Ken Johnson and others at these conferences, showing us pictures of Mars. Things change seasonally. What that's got to be something alive. So,
and you have to just reach a amount of evidence that this consensus amongst the scientific community says, okay, we don't see the bug yet, but the circumstantial evidence is so profound we have to accept it, and we'll cross that next year.
Well, okay, that's fascinating. So other predictions are of greenhouse gases emissions actually rising more than was thought. Is that
all? The environmental indicators are just going to be atrocious. I've got the ice melting faster than thought. The Atlantic Ocean current is still destabilized. The poles are going to be moving at a quicker rate. Every year, the rate that the pole shift is moving, it's faster. When we were kids, it moved like a foot a year.
Yeah, right.
A year. Now it's miles. It's crazy how fast it's moving.
Yeah, it's moving into Siberia, according to what I read.
Yes, and we're getting a double pole. They're not talking about
double poles. Wow.
Anomalous. And South America, off of the southeastern coast of South America, is actually a second pole.
Wow.
Second south negative pole popping up. And they say that when the pole flip happens, it's gradual, and there's all sorts of weird things that happen. You can have two norths and two souths, and you can have all these weird things. And it looks like, that southern area there might be,
right.
Oh, there's so many things, all these ecological dangers, all these technological, everything. It's a convergence of dangerous things.
Convergence
and that
dangerous things.
We don't eschatological things, race-ending things. That's why we don't need to turn these craft into weapons. We need to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is, these are the big unknowns you're pointing out, Bud, is we take all these things for granted on the planet because in our lifetimes, in the past 1,000 years, they've been pretty stable. In the memory of our great-great-grandparents, they've been pretty stable, but they can change. The poles can shift.
Yep.
The glaciers can melt. All sorts of things. As you're pointing out, the Atlantic meridian, or whatever, it's that big cycle of water in the Atlantic Ocean that keeps Britain and Europe warm. It could stop moving, and all of a sudden it gets very cold there.
That Atlantic. Think about we can't even get out of the water that aren't poisoned in some capacity anywhere. A mountain stream, you can't get one that's not poisoned. You can't get them out of the ocean that's not poisoned.
No, the plastic situation. If you've been reading about how many, do you realize that we create 400 billion plastic bags a month on the planet, according to
billion a month?
A month. Yeah, and they never degrade. They just break apart into smaller bits, and then fish eat them, and then we eat them. So we're geniuses. We really created this persistent substance with really unknown effects of what it does to all of us to be consuming microplastic nanoparticles. It's just another topic, but it's an unknown, and something that really people are starting to take seriously?
You know, people don't take radiation very seriously, but so many satellites have burned up in the atmosphere with radioactive payloads. We are going to be blasted with 5G. There's a lot of uh, there's a lot of problems. We're getting poisoned with stuff, and Fukushima is still leaking. No one talks about that, but Fukushima is still leaking. We've got a lot of problems, and it takes the empaths to fight for the solutions. I don't want to just observe this stuff, Doc. I don't want to just observe that a convergence of horrible things is coming to a certain point that's indisputable
Yeah.
and not do anything about it. I'm not just want to talk about it. I want to research. I want to fight for that higher ground. I want to fight to see if we can find out what that field is. I want to fight to see if we can put together some of these different phenomena like Volta did with the electromagnetic field and make some sense out of the mystery. And we all are doing that on this channel. So it's pretty freaking exciting. We're really blessed.
Yes. So we are, and so here's we've got some questions for you.
Okay, far away.
You can do this any manner you want.
Okay.
Let's go back. I've got 3 here. That's a good number. Question came from Patrick a while back. Will we make any progress in understanding Bigfoot this year? Any evidence coming forward for Bigfoot or anything to kind of help us understand this mysterious creature a bit more? I have been reading a lot about this. Tim Lyons has these great short books on Amazon and Kindle, very inexpensive, with very good case studies of people's encounters with these creatures all over the world. It's fascinating and sometimes
I had actually on my channel, I do this little segment called History's No Longer Mysteries. And one of them was actually Bigfoot. So I don't even have to do the I did an RV for it and astral projection because my answer was the first one I got was really weird. And RV for this is a little hard.
Yeah, well, however you want to do it, buddy. I mean, in your gut, do you maybe know things that the rest of us don't from the groups that you work with?
Well,
the
dive right into
creatures.
Right
yes, where are they from? How how do they fit in the whole scheme? Who is Bigfoot and Sasquatch? There's a museum nearby here in Bailey, Colorado, all about Sasquatch. And give us your thoughts, bud.
Bigfoot doesn't really exist in the way that it's generally thought of in the general public. It doesn't exist. But there are things that cross over into this Bigfoot territory and things that look like Bigfoot. So this is where it got really mushy for me. There's not a race that's breeding in private in areas that we just can't find on the planet. They're not there. But there have been real, indisputable cases of police officers and all sorts of great, credible witnesses interacting, seeing these creatures. And one of the things I got from it was an ET thing, which is like, what the F? There is an aspect to the Bigfoot thing that has a little bit of an ET phenomena.
Right.
But how, why, if it's ET generated, if it's an experiment, I don't know. But that was as far as I had gotten with it, that it had an ET collaboration and correlation. But there's also a variety of weird things that are mixed bags in here. There's a genetic disease that humans have that causes major hair all over the body. I'm sure that a lot of cultural stories get built through a wide variety of different things. And human nature to think about an altered human is very natural. So this is kind of like orbs, this topic. There's a lot of different things going on, and some of it actually is ET. But it's not all orbs. It's not all, and that's the same thing with Bigfoot. There's a very, very rare real Bigfoot, but it's associated with ET, as far as my understanding is. That's Bigfoot.
That's
So at
interesting.
least I
And
didn't.
yeah, okay. That's one angle on it. It's interesting. They do seem to come from somewhere that we can't see. I haven't done a Bigfoot book. I've spoken to many Bigfoot witnesses in my research about the UFO topic, and the Bigfoot witnesses are there too. And it seems to have some psychic abilities that influences people. Sometimes see them in their mind's eye a few minutes before they physically encounter them. Things like this. Um, uh, Wow, it's very complicated. It's a very complicated subject, and I don't claim to know all the answers, but it's more than a wood ape. I'll put it that way, and it does have this connection to UFOs and ET activity too, which would kind of fit the parallel reality bleed through model. In other words, the Dr. Hein parallel reality bleed through model, just quickly, is where one sort of thing bleeds through, other things will come through the wormhole. Not in a necessarily scary way, but it just means where you get a little more interaction between these parallel realities. Well, other things can come through at the same time, and they come through in waves, and then it goes away. Anyway, that's my take on it. But do you think we'll get some evidence? What's up?
It could be an ET. There's so many great, cool possibilities of what it is. But I'm sorry to tinkle on anyone's parade who wanted, herds of Bigfoot to be discovered in Siberia.
Well, again, I would just say for people that are interested, these Tim Lyons books, he's got a number of them, and they're really quite good. And they're just cases of people saying what they've seen on the camping trips and things. And some of it's quite creepy to
Cool.
finally, but whatever. So we had a question. I don't know if you want to RV this about Ryan Bledsoe's orb videos. Have you seen any of those, buddy? Is this relative?
In fact, I did just see it like 2 days ago, and I'm really curious myself. Really like Chris Bledsoe, and I would like to do this. So I'm going to need about 5 minutes or less. I'll try and do it faster to do an AP on it. Let me find out question number 3 too, just in case if I finish early, I can knock off the second one.
Okay. Well, we have 2 more. I'll give you the 2 more that I've selected from the list. There's a question about cryptocurrencies.
Great.
You don't, these are up to you, buddy. You don't have to take them. I mean, someone know if cryptocurrencies are going to go higher in 2020. And then good old Sunsaver wanted to know about 0-point energy, any 0-point energy breakthroughs in 2020.
Okay. Interesting.
This
all right.
So yeah, good.
I don't know. I feel bad just leaving you out there for a minute while I dive into these.
No, go ahead. I can
do these pretty fast, though, I think. I just need like
go ahead. You take your time, and I will keep the mic going here. I'll keep the mic hot.
Beautiful.
And you just take your time and come back, and I'll
be back.
I'll just play a tune here. No. I'll just keep talking while you do it. Can I talk? Is it going to bother you if I keep, or do you want to turn the volume down?
Not silent here on my, and I'll be right back.
Okay, so for those of you that want to get a cup of tea or a drink somewhere, wherever you happen to be, some of you are staying up quite late to watch us here, so thank you. If you're coming from Europe or Australia, I have to say the 0-point energy thing is freaking fascinating. I personally follow, Cold Fusion, Leonard, and ECAT, Andrea Rossi's ECAT. And he, if you've watched the ECAT saga recently and developments, ECAT World, Rossi claims to have had another breakthrough that really was the significant one. And he's working with a lot of people. Now, people always want to kind of challenge me on this and say, where's the proof? Where's the proof? I don't have the proof. I don't communicate with Rossi a tiny bit through some of these academic websites where he posts articles and stuff. So I really don't know, but I'm open to it definitely being real. After all, it was at a conference in San Francisco, the SSE conference, Oh, thanks for pointing that out, John. It's Ryan that's posting the pictures. Um, Dr. Vittorio Violante from ENEA in Italy, the government energy research agency in Italy. I posted a YouTube video about this a couple of years ago. I mean, he gave us a long presentation how they had determined cold fusion was real. They had reproduced it in their lab for short periods of time. He didn't say they had turned it into a miracle energy device because they couldn't get it to sustain for more than, I think, maybe a few hours or something like that. But he said the reaction was definitely real. They got more heat than they should have from a chemical reaction. And it's cold fusion is real. So I asked him about Rossi's device. He said he didn't have enough expertise to really know. But this is, again, a type of black swan event that could really change our reality if someone like Rossi does really nail some sort of sustainable over unity process, like Rossi claims. He's having a demonstration, I think, in Sweden again in January, in a couple of weeks. I know we've had a lot of demonstrations from him. We'd really like to see some actual, patents or something that shows that it's a real device. But nonetheless, I'm open to the possibility that these devices are real. At some point, someone is going to figure it out. And I think how long that takes to diffuse into our economy to move us away from a petroleum based energy system, I don't know how long that'll take. But at some point, it's going to happen. So I'm open to the possibility. That's right. Yeah, and John's pointing out there's Mizuno in Japan who's has a device, and he's talked about this. I think people have figured this out, and it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the information has been suppressed. After all, you folks know that here, at least in the U.S., the government can slap a national security order on pretty much anything you're doing if it feels that it's threatening national security. And I believe this has happened at least over 5,000 times, according to the information. Once you've had a national security order slapped on your work, you can't even talk about it anymore. You can't even say that you've received a national security order. So if someone had figured this out and the government didn't want it coming forward for some reason, we wouldn't know about it. So anyway, this is a good question. I'm open to the possibility of these devices being real. And there's certainly Sunsaver. There's different over unity devices, but what we're talking about with things like cold fusion ECAT is a very high power density that you don't get from solar power, without the danger of nukes and things like that. So right, and someone's saying, Omar says they can put a meter on it. Remember, possibly Tesla's already figured this stuff out 100 years ago, and it was too cheap to meter. So apparently his sponsors didn't like that. So, Leonard. So Shani is asking, what is Leonard? It's a low energy nuclear reaction. Some people call it lattice assisted nuclear reaction. I have a couple of videos about it on YouTube. I encourage you to go to e-catworld.com to where I go every day to learn about what's going on with these devices. But it's sort of it's a nuclear reaction that's very low level fusion, some sort of fusion type reaction. How it actually works, there's a lot of debate whether it's virtual particles, parallel realities, quasi particles. Rossi's had different explanations of how his device works. And we're talking about particles interacting in some sort of non-ordinary way that physics hasn't really accounted for so far when you embed hydrogen into materials like palladium and things like that you get a sort of higher level of interaction than you normally would that would create a type of low-level nuclear reaction that produces more energy than is chemically possible. So it's some sort of quantum, some sort of quantum level effect. The goal would be to get it to be sustainable so that the energy coming out from the device now feeds back in and acts like a control mechanism. So the reaction, doesn't get out of hand. This is sort of nuclear powered energy without any radiation, any dangers that we get from fission. It's a fusion type. So yes, and as John's pointing out here, there's The Navy has patents on Leonard, and the Navy is a big researcher of Leonard, by the way. Obviously, there's a lot of applications if you can keep your subs running for a long time without having to service and so forth. So, yeah, the Navy has done a lot of research. Their patents on it. I wouldn't be surprised if a breakthrough. Thanks.
I'm back.
Okay, so Bud's back. That's my 2 cents on Leonard Cold Fusion ECAT. Stay tuned. Bud, what did you get? What did you find?
Well, I don't even know which one to begin. I think one's going to upset people. Let's start with 0 point, since you're just talking about ECAT.
Yes.
There is 0 point currently now. And I think ECAT is indicative of that. But I got 2 different types of what we're calling, it's not really 0 point energy. There's different types. One is actually something that I'd seen before, which is a hydrino reactor. Actually, I don't know if I should even have said that.
No, it's in the public discussion. Yeah, hydrino. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw one under circumstances, whatever. So there's these different types of machines that aren't necessarily tapping into the vacuum energy, which 0 point energy, kind of hints, when the question. So there is, and I don't think it's going to come straight to market. It'll have to come from private industry. The governments will never do it. The Department of Energy I got Department of Energy all over this. And I think they've shelved some of these projects. They have them and they've shelved it, specifically the Department of Energy. And don't forget that they have 2 different intelligence divisions. They have like intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and then a counter intel. Why would the Department of Energy have counter intel? And as we remember, too, the Department of Energy was involved in the Peru UFO recovery plan. And you can imagine the Department of Energy has a lot of reasons to want to get to know UFO technology, because the Department of Energy is responsible for keeping the country advanced, not only in energy, but in a lot of technologies, not just strictly energy. So UFOs are just a kit and caboodle of all these new technologies that are perfect for the Department of Energy. So anyway, 0 point energy, it does exist, but not in the 0 point energy, extracting energy from the vacuum virtual particles aspect. It may exist in the future, but it doesn't now, and it definitely won't come out next year.
By the way, about this, there's a name for this virtual particles. They call it exotic vacuum objects, buddy. And people that research cold fusion and exotic vacuum objects also claim that they produce orbs. These exotic vacuum objects can become orb-like and float around the lab. And the person that really did the research on this is a very interesting historical point here, was Kenneth Shoulders, who worked with Hal Puthoff.
Yes.
And the Casimir effect, Hal knows all about this. He had one angle on it. But it's actually the same people. And funny, strangely enough, that study the UFOs and propulsions and materials that have looked into exotic vacuum objects. Exotic vacuum objects have been connected to the Hessdalen lights, by the way.
EVO is a big deal. It's actually a big. I learned about this year from another scientist introduced this to me, and I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. It was like from left field. Exotic vacuum objects?
Yes.
What is that? So the audience who are not scientifically inclined, in the vacuum, in the supposed most, evacuated of air and oxygen and everything type of space-time, a little chunk of it, there are particles leaping into existence and then out of existence again. They're borrowing energy from the future and exchanging it, and it doesn't violate any laws. They do all sorts of little tricks. One will appear a positive, a negative, they'll hit each other, poof, and disappear again. There's all these crazy functions that happen in there. And amidst all these weird things, there's these things called exotic vacuum objects, which are a reaction that it exists. But it's like, on the probability curve, the most likely things are up here. then the really rare, weird stuff is over here. It seems like the exotic vacuum objects are always on the sides of these really weird stuff. But I also think it's so vague and gray right now, and in terms of our scientific understanding, that you can throw orbs at it, you can throw all sorts of things, and it'll stick. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So,
And John here is pointing out correct. Leonard is not the same as 0 Point. We don't want to say it's the same thing. They're different beasts.
very.
They're all cousins in this alternative energy world, but they're different beasts in terms of how they work, whether it comes from the 0 Point versus from some sort of hydrogen based fuel
reaction.
Yeah.
Element.
So, do you think we'll get any sort of breakthrough this year in any of these areas of 0 Point or Leonard?
No, we're going to get it in the up on the other side. We're going to get it in the chemical, elemental breakthroughs, energy and power. We are going to get a little bit of fission fusion advancements as well. As usual. Well, let's do cryptocurrencies next. Cryptocurrencies are going to see a fall. On average, most of them are going to fall. The hallmark cryptocurrencies, they're going to stay relatively mid-range. No mega profits. I don't see this as a mega profit year for cryptocurrencies. There is going to be timing where I think they'll have more value when the chaos happens in the politics. February, maybe even in November too, around intense election moments. I think cryptocurrency will become more valuable. As something stable in an unstable world, or safe in an unstable world. But in general, I think I wouldn't put my money into cryptocurrencies. I would put them into a long-term stock that is down right now. But if you look at its 5-year, it's a big, stable, universal company, GE, those big hallmark companies that can withstand, some hits, because this next year is going to have hits.
Yeah.
So that's
the thing about cryptocurrencies is people think of them like it's a way to, make money. It's like currency speculation and so forth. But the main thing about cryptocurrencies is the blockchain system that they're based on, the accounting system behind the value of the currency. That is what's so revolutionary for how we could interact, because it means computers go computer to computer without third-walled gardens, as they're known. The Googles, the Facebooks, and the Apples, the companies that control how we use the internet, if it's democratized through blockchain, right? And cryptocurrencies are one example of it. That is very big, because it means these big third parties that sort of control how we communicate would sort of lose their monopoly on apps, on collaboration of information. Let's say all of us, it's an example. Let's say all of us who are on this channel right now, watching and talking, you and I, let's say we could share our UFO information directly, computer to computer, in a safe way that's secure. And we could share what we know and what we think in my notes and your notes. Think how much progress we would be able to make if our computers had the ability to talk to each other directly for whoever you wanted to enter into your group and compare notes and share. That's where it's going, and that's what cryptocurrencies are going to help us to do. And there's a great book about it called Life After Google by George Gilder, which talks about this. But anyway, that's the real revolution here.
There's also some dangers. Cryptocurrency, as you say, is all computer-based, energy-based, electronics-based. A solar flare, certain types of disasters, you can't access your cryptocurrency.
Oh, right.
Also, blockchain is revolutionary in terms of security systems for anything. Inside of a corporation, all sorts of different types of secrets. We could have a UFO, blah, blah, blah. Blockchain is almost unhackable.
Because it's totally accountable. It's totally accountable to everyone who's involved. Right.
Say that, only a quantum computer would be able to hack a true, really good blockchain setup. So, not great news for blockchain. And then finally, please don't hate me.
Get on us, buddy.
I respect the Bloodsoes very much. I believe Chris. I think that it's a mixed bag with this stuff. I think There's some real stuff going on, and there's some fake stuff going on. I saw someone staging a lighting effect, going through the cameras, knowing it was, the light, and knowing that it would produce and this, and then seeing it and being like, oh, knowing that it wasn't an orb, but the picture was a great orb. I hate saying things like that, but that just was my viewing.
Okay.
So if you are watching, Ryan or Chris, if you're watching one of the viewing, I have to be honest, and I have to say my gestalts, and that's what I saw and see. And I see some fabrication. I see some verbal exaggeration, and but then I see real UFOs too. Real craft. I saw multiple real craft. I saw the real craft over a river. I saw real craft over a forest area, really low to the top of the trees. And there's a lot of ET activity. And this is something that I think is really real. And this touches upon the trickster in the universe, the trickster formula. And this is an important formula that ties into the esoteric, ties into UFOs, ties into psi. Sometimes when you do something, or you can become it, or if you're, if you, as a stand-up comedian, on stage, I would say, I've got psychic powers. What do you do for a living? And I'm going to guess what you do for a living. And I did this on stage, here in New York City at the clubs for, 10 years. And I would fake like I was psychic. And I was really great at just telling what people's occupations were. Great at it for some reason. There's all sorts of subconscious cues. But then at the same time, there was real psychic stuff going on with some of them. Like, I could maybe get, like a sheriff because he's big and visual and all this different stuff. But a nuclear engineer, I got some weird occupations that I nailed. And so sometimes when you do one thing, the other, it's the Uri Geller thing. Uri Geller versus Ingo. I always want to be an Ingo. I don't want to do magic tricks and mix it in with this stuff. If you want to be an entertainer, be an entertainer. If you want to be a psi researcher, be a psi researcher, And for me, I don't want to be an entertainer. I'll never do a wacky buddy show. The only way that I would do a documentary is under integrity. I would prefer even to be anonymous as Psychic X, because it's about all of us. So this is a mixed bag. The Ryan Bledsoe, Chris Bledsoe, all the evidence is mixed. Some's real, some's not, some's inspired by the belief. It's complicated, like everything.
No, buddy, this is a very good point. It's quite complex and subtle at the same time. And it's even been a discussion at the SSE meetings, is real, genuine psychics also resort to tricks sometimes. It's called mixed media. And just because there are some mixed media mixed in with the genuine psychic functioning, that doesn't mean that the psychic functioning isn't real. But for some reason, these psychic entertainers feel that they need to bring in other elements. And it does get complex, but it doesn't invalidate the rest of it. And it is a complex picture, isn't it? But this is interesting, buddy. You're saying the same thing that happened to Russell Targ is what you experienced too, is you're doing this stand-up comedy, and all of a sudden you really get a psychic hit that is like, wait a minute, this is...
And it's amazing. I'd go, psychic powers, and the audience would be like, what? How did you know that there was some thing? And I think we do this every day with this psychic ability. A lot of successful business people and successful people are using these abilities, and they just think, oh, it's my intuition. I had a gut feeling about it. How many gut feeling lines have you heard before? So, let's stop being subnormal and let's be normal.
Thanks, Ingo.
Love you, Ingo.
No. See, this is what Russell Targ said. He financed his way through college. He went to Columbia, and he financed his way through college doing stage magician. He was a magician at parties, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
No. This is what Russell always said. And then sometimes he seemed to know something it's exactly what he told us at all these IRVA meetings, Bud, is that he seemed to know a little too much. And it was surprising. He began to wonder whether there was something more going on than magic tricks. Same thing with Daryl Bem from Cornell, who's done all these statistical studies on presentience and the studies where you seem to get a reaction before the picture is even selected by the computer when there's two different pictures, one that's emotional and reactive and the other's dull. And you react before the pictures have been chosen correctly to dull or exciting. And Daryl began to wonder whether there was, he was a magician too. He was interested in magic. He said there was something more going on. So that's the thing. A lot of people, just like what you said, have started with some sort of stage act. And all of a sudden, I'm sure there are more people than I mentioned who they just seem to know more than they should. And they begin to wonder if there's psychic functioning going on.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking cool. And you know what's even weirder too? Is it's not just the psychic side. The psychokinesis as well too. There are people who are remote influencing and they don't know it. Now, remote influence is a very weird thing. People don't like to discuss remote influence because it's supposedly taking away people's free will and all of this and all that. But I remember playing like board games. And if I got into this state of mind where I wanted to win, I had to win, I could get into this mode where I wouldn't lose. I couldn't lose. And I don't know if I was doing something, if I was affecting them. In my mind, I said, well, I know the superstructure of what's really going on here. I'm playing a game with a group of people, and the group of people only have a certain amount of time. So if I know, this person has to leave and that person has to leave, I could be a more aggressive military strategist, or all these different things. That's how I rationalized it to myself. But I think people can even use PK and not know it. And they can use it around.
I totally know what you're saying, buddy, because when I got here to Boulder, a friend who was kind of a neighbor in the office where I had my remote viewing institute, where you've been in the building there, he got me interested in the UC basketball team, the Buffs, Colorado Buffs. And there was a guy on there from the 90s, Jacques Walls. And I would swear some of his moves just seemed physically impossible. He almost would freeze in midair. He would take shots that were perfect. And I would often say to Randy, we would look at each other and say, it almost seemed to defy the laws of physics. It was like we were saying, it was something else was going on. He was influencing the way the ball would move and how he would, seemed almost, I would have to say, paranormal. So I know what you're talking about.
Weird experience the other day. A guy who I had helped came back to me, and I've seen him in the neighborhood a couple of times. His daughter went missing, and he was very upset. My friend Gyro brought him to me. The guy had trained out here, and the guy came and he was crying, and his daughter had been missing for 24 hours. And I said to him that what happened is that she met a boy online. She's at his house. He's older, like 6 years older than she is. And she'll be back at 3:00 today, which was it was like around noon. When I spoke with him the other day, he said that I said, I will make her come back by 3:00 in the afternoon. I don't remember saying that. I don't remember trying to remote influence. Whether I did or it was just a prediction, it really doesn't matter. But she came back, and, the dad was crying beforehand. And I've got the testimonial on the channel. And I wonder, what else do we physically, are we stopping car accidents? Are we, what else are we doing? It's pretty cool. I mean, it's not going to be a major effect, but it sure is cool.
Good question. Remote influencing and psychokinesis, whether it's actually something that's already built into us that we harness when we need to.
Yeah.
To affect the outcomes of certain events.
Doc, all the stuff we put together this past year, and I think this past year for us, things have really crystallized a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm working, as you know, at several very big locations, and one of them is actually trying to do the math and the metrics and the formula and to figure out the field for this.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole project is confirming the model that we have. Everything that's going is more our model. It's more advanced than the Ballet Davis model.
Yeah.
And it's an exciting time to be alive. We're so blessed. And you all who are watching can get involved. You can increase your abilities. You can participate in research in your area. And you never fail. If you don't make a target or you don't get the highest number or whatever, it's just a part of the learning experience. If you can get yourself comfortable with failing big and not afraid to fail, you're going to kick ass.
Yeah.
And anything we can help. Doc has so many amazing resources for resonant viewing for free. And then he's literally got the best classes that have been, for me.
Well, thank you.
Huge, profoundly, increased my abilities and accuracy and all sorts of different things. You've seen it. You saw my work.
No. Some of it was truly remarkable. But one thing before we go, we're getting to that time to wrap it up. We just had a question from Erica here. One more thing about Bledsoe. If you could answer this, if you feel comfortable answering this, did you believe that Bledsoe was deliberately committing fakery, or was it intentional, or is it just something that happened in the course of filming things that it looked that way, or is it something that you saw that you believe?
Not malicious, like what's that guy's name who's doing all of those, and he had a documentary about him, and he had little aliens peeking through the window.
Oh yeah,
what's that guy?
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about, right? Oh, he was so horrible. Oh, trying to think of his name, and then he got charged with like pedophilia at the end. You don't know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, the name escapes me, but it's someone I'm familiar with. Yeah,
not like that.
Okay.
He's not consciously. I'm going to do this. Now that the whole thing is going, he's feeding it, and he is staging things.
Yeah.
But his mind, he's staging them to reinforce the real events that happened.
Yeah, so mixed media.
So he did see the craft. He has seen craft. Other people have been there with him and seen craft.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also sprinkling.
All right.
And that's something I abhor. I am involved in a lot of different aspects of this.
Yeah.
From healing, fake healing. From PK in front of people, no touch. In front of scientists, in front of we're not faking. We spin compasses in laboratories, in Faraday cage rooms with people from major space agencies and checking out you and everything. We don't fake any of this stuff because we want to really know what's on reality's edge.
Yes.
If I was ever caught doing any of that stuff, I would hope that all 2,700 of my subscribers would come to the Bronx and kick my ass.
Oh, we will, buddy. We will.
Field that we all love so much and is so important.
So will Galileo. He's going to come and kick your ass too.
And Galileo would be bad. Topic is so important. Hey, if anyone wants, I'll teach you in Galileo Park free anytime.
Well, buddy, thanks again for a great show. I want to say thanks everyone for watching. This has been really fun. I really enjoyed this. 2020, I guarantee you, is going to be a great year for all of these subjects. And we're going to see a lot in 2020. How about that?
Yeah, and I think we're all going to get more involved.
We are. And so stick with it. I think it's really going to be a big year for payoff in a lot of these topics, just at the right time. And we will see all of you on Reality's Edge. How about that?
Love you guys. Love.
Happy New Year.
Love you.
a lot of YouTubers will try almost any ploy to tug at your heartstrings and to get more viewers, but not Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy. We just love kittens.